Okay. One Piece chapter 1052. So I'm curious about these new bounties. I was going to quit recording for today. However, I got to know what these bounties are, who they're calling the new four emperors of the sea. That's going to be interesting because it's like you got to have Luffy on there, but it's like between Law and between Kid, who's going to be on there? Like, who's going to be that fourth emperor? Or are they just going to go with the five emperors of the sea thing? Because they had already declared Luffy one of the emperors. So it's one of those things where I'm curious to see how they break this down. It kind of feels like you have to do all three because Law and Kid, they tag team Big Mom, which that sounds so dirty, but I don't mean it in a dirty way, but they tag team Big Mom, and Luffy went toe to toe against Kaido by himself. So it's like, it's one of those things where unless you just troll us and you make Buggy, who had nothing to do with this whole fight, you make Buggy one of the four emperors of the sea as a big middle finger to Luffy and Kid and Law. I'm curious to see where Oda takes this. So the other thing here too is that the world government makes it known that they came close to just executing a buster call and like taking everything over in Wano. And it looks like Momo, because he did not open up the borders, even though he had his own reasons for doing it, Momo actually dodged the bullet here because things would have gotten worse. So with my initial thoughts out of the way, let's go ahead and back things up a little bit and let's dive into the review itself. So the chapter opens up where you have the elders and they're talking and they're saying, so the Nika fruit has finally descended upon the world. Two of the four emperors, they've been defeated in the same battle. We can't cover up this information. The timing can't be worse. How do we actually respond to something like this? And you can tell that they know they're absolutely screwed because they're completely right. You can't hide this information from people. They will find out. It's going to leak out, especially because you have outsiders who are there on Wano. And you have this moment where one of the members from CP0 is saying, we won't hesitate to bring back Nico Robin. Don't worry about that. We're going to capture her. So it's one of those things where like they're celebrating like the Straw Hats in them, but Nico Robin is still in danger. And it feels very appropriate that Nico Robin, after everything that we've had go on, she's now back in the focus because Luffy with this God power of his basically, and that's basically what this is. With this God power, there has to be a connection to the Poneglyphs. And Luffy just happens to have the person in his crew that can actually decipher everything. And it's one of those things where as they're talking, they're trying to find some solace in what they can actually salvage from the situation. And it becomes a situation after this where the narrator lets us know that Wano has been celebrating after being released from 20 years of tyranny under Kaido and Orochi. And you have this moment where Hawkins and Drake, they're sharing a moment speaking to each other. And Drake is like, you know, you didn't come here to just question me on whether or not I've actually been part of the Navy. But we see with Hawkins, as he begins to start talking, he admits some of his shame. He says that he just folded right away when he came in the presence of Kaido because he sensed all that death that Kaido had. But then when he looks at how Law and Kid were able to stand up against Kaido, he feels some shame. And he says even if he could have foreseen the victory, he can't go back to just sucking up to Kid again because it's one of those things where he's lost his pride as a pirate. So I thought that was nice to see that bit right there. And as Hawkins declares the fact that the certain man that they're talking about that was able to survive until morning, that had a 1% chance of surviving, was actually himself. And you see how Hawkins is falling unconscious here. We shift over to 7 days later and you see more of the changes where essentially the people are actually learning, the kids are learning the truth about Wano's history. They're learning about Oden. They're learning about the Kozuki clan. You see the people, they're partying, but they're also talking about how Oden's daughter was amongst them all along and they're talking about her story. You see children drinking fresh water. You have Kinemon sitting on top of one of the shrines and basically talking about the fact that they need to build another shrine. This one's going to be for Oden himself. And it's going to be for all of those who fought to uphold Oden's legacy and those that died. And I like how Marco's there to kind of take in some of that information. And we shift over to where Yamato and Luffy are going to be reunited now, because we see Yamato and she's saying that she's not going to be hungry. She's not going to be hungry. She's willing herself to not eat and not bathe until Luffy is coming to. It's been 7 days, which I commend her for something like that. And we shift over and we see how Momo just gets drop kicked by what looks like his sister. We get this really cool scene where like Luffy's first words when he wakes up are meat. Zoro's first words are booze. And you see both of them are back in their lovable meat-headed personas that we've grown to love over 1,000 chapters. And you have a really cool moment where Momo tells him, hey, don't eat too much because we're going to hold a feast. You can tell Luffy's looking at him like, who the hell are you? And you can tell for a moment he doesn't recognize him. And when Momo says it's me, you have Zoro's first reaction saying, hey, you got some muscle on you, kid. Let's see how well you can take a punch. Typical meat-headed fashion. And what I like here is that Momo takes the time to just jump into Nami's chest, just like he did when he was a little kid. He make all those perverted faces and all that. When he grabs onto Nami's boobs, Nami just sucker punches this dude, sends him flying. And you see the humor, and you see Sanji just making this ugly face, saying, welcome to the world of adulthood. Because the things he could get away with as a kid, he can't get away with it right now. And you can tell Sanji's just reveling in this right now. And you see how Momo's doing his best to try and hold on to that innocence. Like, I'm still an 8-year-old at heart. Don't treat me like this. It's like, yo, you've been perverted, but you ain't gonna get away with something like this, fam. I like that. That was freaking hilarious. And what I like about this also is that Yamato has a moment where after Nami says like, hey, let's just go ahead and take a bath before the festival, Yamato's just chowing down because she hasn't eaten during this time. You got Sanji getting completely pissed off over the fact that Zoro got his body washed by what looks like Hiyori. And he's like, look, Ma said we're going to have to talk. And you see Zoro recall how Sanji says that, like, I want you to kill me if I'm not in my right mind. You see these two just go right back into fighting. And you got Yamato saying like, hey, there's no mixed bath here, so I can't bathe with you. And then you got Kiku basically saying, hey, I can bathe with you too, though. And it's one of those things where it's like, even though Kiku is a man, he's going to bathe with the women. And even though Yamato's a woman, she's going to bathe with the men. And it's because Kiku's like, I want to be a woman, even though I'm not actually a woman. Yamato's like, I want to be a man, even though I'm not actually a man. And what I like about this is how you have this moment where Oda just plays up the comedy of this whole situation. So you got Yamato joining the men, you got Brook, and you got Sanji with the nosebleed. Sanji is out of it. Like, I can't believe what I'm seeing. And you got Momo basically saying like, yo, what's going on here? Yamato, you're exposing yourself. And then where the women are bathing, you got Kiku being super modest, whereas all the other women are just letting everything hang out. You got Kiku being the one that's completely modestly covered up. Like, yeah, we used to bathe together when Oden was alive, but I felt so ashamed being around men. It's like, yo, my God. Oda gotta know what he's doing with the trolling right here. And what I like about this too, though, is that after the Straw Hats get to the moment where it looks like they're about to set sail and get out of there, you got kids saying, hey, don't get buddy-buddy with these folks. We got to keep our guard up. Intel's going to leak out. The paper's going to hear about what we did here. We got to be careful. And even Law's like, hey, he's got a point. They can't see us from the outside of this closed out nation, but we don't know what the enemy's up to either. We're going to have to be careful as well. They're going to take our bounties and just skyrocket them. We got to be careful about the narrative they have. And that's when the bounties get dropped in the form of a paper. And you have the new admiral communicating with the Kainu saying, look, I'm headed towards Wano right now. I can see it. But don't worry, I'm not going to make things any worse. And it's one of those things where, because this guy's floating through the air, you can tell that his primary purpose is basically to snitch out who's going in which direction. So my chapter question to you guys is, who's going to be targeted first? Assuming that Law's crew and Kid's crew and Luffy's crew all leave together at the same time, who's going to get targeted first. I kind of feel like the narrative's setting Kid up to be targeted first because it's one of those things where he's such a hothead that he's the one that's going to be the easiest to actually take advantage of. But so always, guys, if you like anything I had to say, don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching to the end. Have an awesome day, guys.